Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
You want some soup?
Don't you agree?
Another happy landing.
All right, welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. We got brand new episode of The Mandalorian to chat about. Chapter 14, The Tragedy. And I'm going to do that with our friends here in the Escape Pod. We got Blake. Welcome back, Blake.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. It's always a fun time. I'm looking forward to this one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Bryce, welcome back.
Hello. Good to see everyone.
And it's been a long time, but Calvin's back as well. Welcome back,
yeah,
Calvin.
you guys may remember me from the Phantom Menace episode, I believe. I think it was our highest viewed episode, right? And a real spike in the views and the fan following.
Yeah,
so I'm
that's
here.
Right.
I'm back.
That's right. Everyone knows Calvin. Everyone knows
Team Calvin.
It's the Calvin. The one and only.
The one and only. So what do you guys think of this episode? Because for the first time in ever, I guess, aside from the Clone Wars and the animated shows, we actually get some real Boba Fett action in this show.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's something a lot of people have been waiting for.
I don't know. I thought he was better in Return of the Jedi.
Nice.
I feel like that was a better send-off. Maybe we should have stuck to that.
I saw so many comments online from people finally that stupid ending for him in Return of the Jedi is overwritten.
Yeah, that's fair. People have been upset about that for 40 years? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's just I always thought it was so funny because this character, it was just this background character at first, and then becomes a fan favorite, and then George just kills him off in the most pleb-like way possible.
It would be.
Go ahead.
It'd be kind of because you know what, they're probably halfway done filming Return of the Jedi as Boba Fett's becoming this fan favorite, and I'm sure George is just sitting there oh crap, they're not going to be happy with with what I've done here. Oh no. This isn't going to be good.
I feel like his character is popular though because he died that way. I feel like that has been the fact that he survived the Sarlaac pit has been unofficial fan lore, and I don't know, maybe it was made official at some point, but at least pre-Disney it was unofficial fan lore, and now it's canon. Now it's Disney canon.
It's true. Was it ever George Lucas canon before? Because it was in the novels, so I don't know. I guess before there was that weird tier of canon, wasn't it? So it was
well, everyone was just writing Star Wars books.
Yeah, but George had to sign off on it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that relationship worked with... I know that he had the ability to go in and say what he didn't want. But yeah, I don't think he knew all the details. He's the kind of guy that things just kind of went by. But it was something big, like killing off a main character or whatever. Then I think he was told to.
I think he definitely would have been involved in the decision whether or not to bring back Boba Fett. And I think that happened fairly early on. That a book came out.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say
the
the late 80s or the mid 90s where I think
it was the Mandalorian trilogy, I think it's called.
Yeah, it was the book that features Dengar kind of for the first time, right? That
Right.
like the bounty hunter novels. Yeah.
Yeah, because Dengar like finds him and nurses him back to health or whatever.
Yeah.
I think though without Boba Fett, I don't think we would have the clone troopers. We wouldn't have like any of the Mandalorian lore, like that whole like.
It's really funny though because that did piss off a lot of people when they revealed that Boba was like a clone.
Right.
I don't know
why
why
he doesn't even have his own identity. There's thousands.
No,
of
I think you're right though. Like a lot of the original, even concepts of having the Mandalorians and stuff just came from Boba Fett, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really thought about that kind of.
I mean, just the design of the helmet that the clone troopers ended up having was meant to be inspired by that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then going back even further to kind of the Ralph McQuarrie concepts, there was originally a plan in place to have Boba Fett as this white armored guy, which I think prior to being a bounty hunter. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. So like prior to being a bounty hunter, he was supposed to be, I think, what George maybe have referred to as a super trooper or something.
Yeah.
And and they were basically like Imperial troops that like elite troops kind of thing. And Hasbro Black Series more recently launched the Boba Fett scaled 1-to-1 replica helmet, and they also launched a white one alongside that to kind of pay tribute to that costume. And there's early footage online of like those super kind of test armor, like when they try the costume on, but it's not finished yet. And his cape was like that Star Wars beach towel and everything. So it's gone as far as them making like an action figure for this thing. And people dress up that way at Celebration and stuff. I know that when we were there, we saw a couple of people with the proto Boba Fett look to them.
Okay, it's hard to keep them apart because there's so many Mandalorians.
Yeah, but to me, what's interesting is that even though Boba Fett is like, it's like what Calvin said, like he's this guy that kind of inspired all of this extra stuff that came after. But like the original concept of him being this like super trooper kind of person, then kind of later rolled into Jango Fett being the template clone. And so, and I think when he had his armor done up for Attack of the Clones, it was also white before. I think they were going to go with like a white look, and then the raw material came out silver or something. And I read something along the lines of that George actually likes the look of the raw silver.
The metal.
So it just stayed that way instead. But
and that became Beskar later on.
I guess so, yeah. So it's very interesting.
I mean, we know this already, but it's interesting that Boba Fett would have changed to like change the color of his armor from like blue to green.
Well, that's a Mandalorian thing. So they all have their own kind of custom armor, and they usually paint it to match their clan.
Right.
And I think it's just like it's something that they've kind of made more clear as time has gone by with Star Wars Rebels. You know, they had Sabine, who was a character who loved painting everything. And at first I was kind of like, what the heck? Like, there's this character that has this, obsession with like, artsiness and stuff. But
How dare they have an artistic Star Wars character?
Yeah, I know, right? But I guess it's a part of their culture, because then in this show, I think it's the first time we really see like all these Mandalorians with very different like types of armor paint and like all this extra stuff and different shapes of helmets and everything. Because in the animated shows, I guess, they just recycle models, right? Because it's cheaper. So everyone just looked the same. Like all the troopers and everything for the Death Watch and for
just a few custom random characters or like hero. That's about it.
Yeah, but the shapes are all generally there, and it's a little less kind of unique, right? But then in this show, it's like, oh, well, now it actually looks like the fan costume group, just in Star Wars. So I think a lot of people appreciated the fact that they actually went as far as doing that. But it explains a little more.
Here's the question, though. You're Boba Fett. Your dad, Jango, takes you to Geonosis to watch an execution. He presumably kills a Jedi Knight in an asteroid field, and you watch him get his head cut off in front of you. You pick up his armor, and then you're like, nah, I don't like the blue. I'm gonna paint it green. I feel like as a kid, you watch your dad's head get chopped off in front of you, like that I don't know. To me, that's like dishonoring the memory of like painting it a different color after that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I see where you're going with this.
There's
I
a
also
lot of time, though.
I feel kind of traumatized by the memory of that, though. I almost would maybe want to set like distance myself from that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So in the show, Boba Fett does have a story arc through the Clone Wars, and he shows up a decent amount of times to the point where I would say he actually does have like this overarching story, which kind of takes him from this hothead kid who's trying to get revenge on Mace Windu, and kind of takes him to this next level where he's actually like a bounty hunter kind of in his own right, and also the reason why he gets this kind of Western flair to him. And I think I brought this up before, maybe at one point on the show, I forget when, but in one of the canceled Clone Wars arcs, there was going to be a story where him and Cad Bane, who in the Clone Wars show is like this Western cowboy kind of bounty hunter, and he's like the galaxy's like most #1 badass guy, and they have kind of like this mentorship going on. And I think a lot of that kind of rubs off on Boba. And Cad Bane is the one who has the spurs and the hat and all that stuff. And by the end of the arc, they actually kind of have this rivalry. And I don't really know what happens, but Boba has like this sense of honor, and Cad Bane doesn't. And so they actually are at odds with some sort of scenario, and they end up in this really classic kind of Western shootout. And Cad Bane kind of whips out his gun and takes a shot at Boba and vice versa and stuff. And that's the reason why Boba gets a dent in his helmet, and Boba ends up killing Cad Bane and then becoming kind of the #1 bounty hunter of the galaxy. So that's towards like the end of the Clone Wars, but we never actually got that story arc because of the cancellation.
They said that those reels are canon, though, I believe.
They did, yeah, they did. So those events did take place, but that's kind of where it was going to go, and I do hope that we actually end up.
Are we ever going to see a live action Cad Bane?
Oh man, that would be cool. The story would have to take place like back in Clone Wars, but that would be
I think
sick.
Josh would probably apply for the voice.
I was gonna say that. Yeah.
No.
Josh, I know it's been a few years, but you should whip out your Cad Bane voice here. It kind of shows what it's all about.
No, people will make fun of it.
I promise you, I won't mock you. I'll just laugh hysterically.
The worst thing to do to someone is to put them on the spot and say, "Oh,
I know.
do the voice right now." With no cue and no context.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Trust me, though, Calvin.
No, I'd rather you drop.
If you've heard his voice.
Yeah, well,
no,
spot on.
I heard your oh man, you did. I was listening to the last episode, and what was the impression you did? Dave Filoni. That was great. I love.
Oh, the Dave Filoni.
Yeah, that was great.
Well,
afterwards, I was like, I had to go and like watch an interview, and I'm like, and to see how accurate it was. It was pretty accurate.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I feel like it's got to be a weekly thing where Dave joins us on the show for this for a little questionnaire.
Yeah, we could talk about him a little bit for a second here, because as you're going through that story of Boba, you just made me remember that when I first saw that series, it was like the story reel where they had the duel between Cad Bane and Boba. So it's really cool to actually see how they must have created Cad Bane in the beginning with the intention of bridging the gap between Boba and Jango. So like when you first meet Cad Bane, he's just like this hokey cowboy bounty hunter. But then, once we've seen that reel, we've started to realize that this was probably a plan from the very beginning that Dave would have had.
Bounty hunter stuff.
Yeah, like to actually make Boba into who we see he is in the original trilogy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I think there's a plan in place to have this arc happen. And thanks, Dave, for that comment. He just pops up.
Nailed it.
This episode was directed by Robert Rodriguez. Are you guys familiar with?
Yes, I am very, very familiar with Robert.
Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about. He's like
a VFX artist, composer, director, actor. And
he's the everything guy.
Actually, one of my favorite movies of all time, Spy Kids 3D.
He's a jack. Well, Spy Kids 3D is not my favorite of the series, but
John's
Spy
an
Kids
OG
2 Lost Island.
yeah, no, Spy Kids 2. Honestly, I love that movie. Growing up with Spy Kids, it was one of my favorite series. Yeah, and now he's directing
his first reappearance into live action.
Yeah, so like, who does he know that he got this? Like, who was like, was someone looking? They're like,
No idea.
we
No
need
idea.
Rodriguez for this. He's the only one.
I don't know. I got major. I know one of you guys said you got kind of Iron Man vibes when you saw the Dark Troopers flying. I actually had Spy Kids vibes as well, because in the first Spy Kids, there's like a whole sequence where people are like jetpacking around.
Yeah,
and stuff.
you're totally
dude,
right.
when Mandalorian, when Mando was flying, holding the child and flying towards that rock, I was like,
yeah, Carmen and Junie like whipping through San Francisco, or what is it, San Diego, whatever. Like they're
100%.
like whipping through the streets on the jetpack, and yeah, totally.
Oh my goodness!
He's like,
Josh is fanboying out here.
I'm like nerding out as Spy Kids here.
Maybe they'll release like a Spy Kids 3D edit where like the Mandalorian ship gets blown up, and then there's like nuts and bolts that fly towards the screen in 3D. It's like, whoa!
That'd be insane. I totally watched that. But yeah, we got Robert Rodriguez for this episode, which was pretty cool. I never saw it coming, but
right here, wow.
Oh no, I don't know. We don't have him here. We'll have to get him for next week.
Oh man, what a letdown.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the first kind of in canon on-screen appearance of a really kind of OG Jedi planet called Tython, which is pretty cool because Tython goes back in Legends like quite far, and it does pop up in some of the video games, and I don't know, does it pop up in KOTOR at all, or is that only the older?
No, maybe not. I think we might have talked about this last week. It's not on Tor. It's on Tor. It's not on KOTOR.
Right. Okay. All right.
Speaking
Did
of
any of you
KOTOR,
guys play Tor?
Yeah, I was gonna say. Speaking of KOTOR, when is Candace Ordo gonna make his live action?
His debut.
I really want to hear.
I think we're about 1,000 years, at least for this. That'd be cool though, because I don't know if they do like
Ancestor.
Yeah, like a old Republic series.
Oh man, I'm so down for that. Honestly, actually, by the way, as a side note, today they announced that Knights of the Old Republic 2 is coming to mobile.
I heard that.
Which is interesting because the first one's been available for a long time, and they actually said on record, I think a year ago, they said we don't have any plans to bring Knights of the Old Republic 2 to mobile, but it's just announced today that it's gonna come to mobile. So that's pretty awesome.
Hopefully they go ahead and fix it, because if they just do a port, like it's gonna crash a lot. Because the original release was released like super buggy, and there's a lot of fan like X-Packs or whatever that fix a lot of the crashing issues and actually take most of the deleted content that got cut out at the end because they ran out of time and actually put it back, and it actually creates a real ending for the game because they had to release without it being finished.
Oh, I wonder if they'll add content to it. That'd be pretty insane.
That'd be cool. I mean, all the information for the deleted content is in there because the modding community just took what was already in the game, the actual files, and they just like finished it and implemented it. So they just ran out of time and just had to cut it.
Interesting. Well, that'll be cool when it comes out. I'll definitely have to try and play that. But yeah, Tython is kind of this very Jedi-esque world, and we didn't really get much more than a rock. And
does anybody have any theories on who the Jedi he was contacting was? Or I mean, we're assuming that like someone.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up. So just to add on to that question, there is a shot in the show there where in the very distance you see him on the rock, and there's like this other person up there.
Oh,
what?
There's like so like somebody pointed that out online, and it's like super hard to see.
Are you sure it's not one of those like guy in jeans problems?
I wonder. They edited that out.
Yeah, they ghost edited that and they replaced it and put it back up.
Someone at ILM had like a last minute note on their shot, like you gotta get that. You gotta get that
Yeah, exactly.
John Knoll did it himself. He just couldn't leave it up there.
My theory as to like who he was contacting, like honestly, like I'm just gonna throw it out there, but it's possible that we might get Ewan McGregor showing up as Obi-Wan at some point, because I know that there's been
in ghost form.
Because I know that there was some sort of like public statement that he was there, right? Like on set. And it was while he was filming Kenobi. Yeah, it was while he was filming Kenobi, but it makes me wonder, is he going to be in this show because of that, you know, that thing, right? Like maybe they just wanted to make sure that people knew, oh, he's only here because of Kenobi, and really he's actually there filming something in a room with like maybe 3 other people. So
give them a pretty good excuse if they wanted to do that. Like, no one would be any of the wiser.
Yeah. It makes me wonder.
If all of a sudden they're holding casting for, like, an Aladdin character, I think people would kind of get a hint of what they're going to do, right?
Right, yeah. Well, and
Ezra Bridger, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. Well, further on top of that, I mean, we know that young Luke Skywalker was kind of recreated for Episode 9, like in that flashback sequence. So it is likely that he could at some point maybe make a small appearance in the show as well. I don't know when or if that'll happen, but you know, that's also a possibility.
Do they ever say how far along Luke's academy is in this timeline at this point in The Mandalorian?
No, they haven't said it in the show yet, but I think in canon, like I think he's still kind of supposed to be building that. So so I think
he might be looking for students.
This means that the Jedi could totally be Kyle Katarn, right?
I would not be surprised at this point.
I'm not a Jedi.
The fact that they've like now brought in like Thrawn and Ahsoka and all these characters, like I would not be surprised if they reached into that pocket.
No, shows up, I'm gonna die.
It's gonna be Mara Jade calling.
That'd be a pretty big one, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But I don't know. Maybe they'll save that for season 3 because we've already had quite a few name drops.
It's funny that Disney took over Star Wars and they just deleted all of these characters that are post trilogy that everyone loved.
And Dave's now bringing them all back.
Yeah, exactly. Now Dave's just slowly bringing them back into the fold. Like, please forgive them. I do not know what they do.
Oh man. Yeah, so I don't know, did you guys get any like Fallen Order vibes when you saw the child kind of placed onto the rock there and all the ancient like Jedi text around there start glowing and stuff?
The glowy thing did seem a little almost video gamey in its styling.
Yeah, I love how he just kept on like bashing into it, and he's like, "Oh no, it's going to totally work this time." And just keeps on hitting it.
Just try again.
It was
knocked
totally
out
like
cold.
in a game.
Okay, this time.
It's totally like in a video game where you're like, "Oh no, I think I just need to like go a little faster. I think I just need to go from the left this time."
He got the button sequence incorrect.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to crash through this wall. Just going to force it.
Yeah, I had some pretty big Fallen Order vibes like after playing through that last year, and you know we're gonna get a sequel to that game too. But a lot of people speculating at some point that maybe a Jedi who shows up, because of course you know Ahsoka did say like he's supposed to go on this rock and then a Jedi is gonna come and find him, right? So at some point we're gonna get a Jedi other than Ahsoka showing up. So like you know that's the big question that Calvin posed as well, because like. You know, just to add on to that, it's like, you know, not only do we have the possibility of like Obi-Wan and Luke showing up, but I mean, like what Blake said, we got Ezra from Star Wars Rebels that could potentially show up. There's also Cal Kestis from the Jedi Fallen Order video game series, which has not been resolved yet. He very well could show up as well. And the actor who plays him did play Jerome / the Joker on the Gotham TV show. So he's very accustomed to playing a character on television. So that would be cool. Like seeing him in live action, that would be pretty sweet. But yeah, lots of options.
Kyle Katarn or Rosh Pennon. It's one of the two.
Calvin's hoping for a character not on the giant list that could be. Yeah, so there's a bit of something that was kind of cleared up in this episode that I guess people have been struggling with for quite a long time now, is when Clone Wars season 3 or something came out. There was an arc, or maybe it was season 4 or 5 or something. I forget. but there was an arc in which Obi-Wan goes to Mandalore, and he speaks with a character there, Prime Minister Almec, and it's because there's a member of the Death Watch who was wearing Mandalorian armor that looked very close to Jango Fett, who showed up and started killing a bunch of clones and stuff like that. And so he goes there kind of seeking answers to this whole scenario. And Prime Minister Almec says, like, oh, that's... He doesn't really know anything about it. He basically also kind of dismisses the fact that Jango Fett was even a Mandalorian and says, like, he was just a common bounty hunter. Like, I don't know how he got that armor at all. And so there's like a lot of kind of in canon reason for a long time now that kind of points evidence towards the fact that Jango Fett just had Mandalorian armor and wasn't Mandalorian.
That's what I thought too.
But that has now been uncanonized.
Yes. So this is now that whole thing has been uncanonized, and now we're reaching back into the Legends bag again.
Yeah.
Thanks to Dave Filoni.
The Civil War, right? Yeah.
Yes. So the Mandalorian Civil War, Boba Fett himself just says, that he basically says that Jango was a foundling, and that he was taken in by I guess Jaster Mareel. And
there we go.
Yeah. And
is that who was in the books?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, just as a bit of a, Bryce, did you want to like fill in a bit just about Jaster Mareel and all that, if you know any more?
Yeah, I actually don't know too much about it. I know it was like it was mainly like a comic series, right? That whole series where they introduced the
season. Yeah.
Yeah, they introduced the Death Watch, and then of course they're fighting, and the Death Watch is fighting in a civil war against like. What are they called? I think they're called like the True Mandalorians or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's a pretty much what happens is there's kind of like the Jedi try to broker a peace. It doesn't work out. It ends up in a giant bloodbath, and then Jango Fett kind of has it out against the Jedi from then on because of that big muck
and
up.
like his
because Jedi would have definitely intervened in that timeline.
And the Death Watch actually like murder Jango's family as well, and then Jaster Mareel, like who a part of the True Mandalorians or whatever, like what you're talking about, they were like taking refuge on like his farm, and this was when Jango was like a kid, right? And then the Death Watch come in. And some of them get away, but they actually execute Jango's parents. And then Jaster Mareel adopts Jango that day, kind of thing. And then he becomes one of the True Mandalorians. Ironically enough, because in canon we have Prime Minister Almec here saying like he wasn't a Mandalorian, but he becomes one of the True Mandalorians. And then I guess he joins their ranks or whatever. Jaster Mareel eventually dies, and then and then I don't really know what happened after that in Legends, but he eventually just became a bounty hunter, but it makes more sense though that he's got this history because Jango has always he's always been this kind of guy with a code, right? Even in the Clone Wars when Boba is going after revenge for Mace Windu killing his father and stuff like that, when he's on Florum, Hondo, who's a kind of this pirate character, says
no honor.
He's a kind of guy who you could say that, right? And like and Aurra Sing Aurra Sing and Bosk have like a bunch of Republic troops kind of held hostage, and Ahsoka's gone off running for them, and Plo Koon is there, and he's asking Boba, who's kind of the only one of the group that have been captured. He says like, where are they? Like, where are the hostages? And Boba's like, why should I tell you anything? I've got no one. And then Hondo kind of takes him aside, and he goes like, tell the Jedi what he wants to know, Boba. Like, it's what your father would have wanted. And so like he actually has like some sense of honor. And so Boba tells him where they are, and then they're actually able to save those people. And then later on in the show, like Boba's got all these moments where he does kind of, even though he is a bounty hunter, he does have that sense of honor. And like I see that in Din Djarin as well, where like even though he is in this kind of career, it doesn't mean that he's a scumbag. Like he's actually a protagonist,
for sure.
right?
He's a good
so in this episode, I think this is the first episode that we actually see, aside from Clone Wars, a very kind of live action version of like this protagonist version of Boba Fett, because we're used to seeing him as a villain. Like, we're used to seeing him as this guy who just takes Han Solo away from us and delivers him to this slug guy. So, you know, like that's all generally like people tend to know about the guy. And now he shows up and he's here to save the day because he's willing to go along with Din Djarin to save Grogu. So I think that's really nice that we're able to kind of see a little more about this side of the character. And yeah.
And actually, as you were talking through that, I realized something. So in the expanded universe, Boba eventually becomes Mandalore, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you remember a couple episodes back, one of the Mandalorians actually was talking directly to Din Djarin and said, like, we will restore Mandalore.
Yeah.
So that could be alluding to, at this point, Boba might be canonized as Mandalore, just like he was in the expanded universe.
I kind of figured they were alluding to that because also they mentioned something about the new Mandalore being. I don't know. Maybe they actually did mention this. Maybe I'm just making this up. But I thought they said something about like the new Mandalore being a foundling or being like not like a or something like that. I don't know.
One of the clans or something.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and watch that part where she says that. But I'm like, oh, there's like another person that fits that kind of position.
That'd be interesting because we also know that Bo-Katan Kryze, who, you know, being the sister of Satine from the Clone Wars show, like they were kind of at odd ends, right? But Satine was like the Duchess of Mandalore, and she's dead now. Yeah. And Bo-Katan was kind of part of the Death Watch, and then Splinter Celled off of that with a bunch of people once they realized that Maul had taken over that whole thing and kind of ruined it. But she's after the Darksaber again because the last time we saw her character was in Star Wars Rebels, where Sabine gave her the Darksaber after they found it in Maul's like house or whatever on Dathomir, and she went on to kind of, I guess, rule the remnants of Mandalore back before the original trilogy, and now kind of, you know, 10-ish years later, Moff Gideon has the Darksaber. A big massacre had happened. We don't know what happened exactly, and Bo-Katan's been looking for it this whole time, right? So it's also possible that Bo-Katan and you know, Boba are kind of in the same running for that position as like leader of Mandalore kind of thing.
I don't think Boba wants to be Mandalore. I think that's how in the EU. He doesn't want to do it, but he gets chosen to be it for whatever reason.
I do think it makes more sense for Bo-Katan to be Mandalore. Like, as much as I love the old expanded universe of Boba Fett becoming Mandalore, I think it doesn't quite fit his character.
No, that's true. Well, is Mandalore supposed to be elected from just being their greatest warrior? Because that seems very Mandalorian culture to me.
Something like that. Something you have to kill, like what are those things called? The symbol, that skull. What are those? What are those beasts called? That they have a really dumb name.
Oh, yeah.
Mandalorian beasts. What are they called?
I'm not too sure.
Mythosaur. It's a Mythosaur.
Oh, Mythosaur. Yeah.
Which at this point I don't know if they exist anymore because like in the first season that Ugnaught kind of threw that at Din Djarin and said, like, you're a Mandalorian, you can't even ride a simple bull. Like, and it's like your kind rode the great Mythosaur.
I thought it was a basilisk or whatever he calls it.
Dude, that's from Harry Potter.
There's another creature that Mandalorians ride though, and they're like half machine and half like creature things from the ancient Mandalorians.
I know what you're talking about. Luke has a Star Wars miniature that's got that. I totally forget what those are called. But I don't know. There's so much around this whole Boba Fett thing now that he's kind of officially back, and you know I'm really happy that they brought him back this way. Like, do you guys feel as if maybe it's going to take away a bit from the existing characters, or do you feel like this is a good kind of implementation?
I feel like it's going to be the same as Ahsoka. It's going to be like one episode, maybe 2 episodes. He's gone. Maybe we'll see him again at some point. I really liked how they did make him distinct from Jango. Like, I mean, obviously the same actor, but I think watching him, he's giving a different performance Jango. Both like visually how he looks like physically.
Yeah.
Like how he fights and how he moves and how he talks and everything. I just loved that. Like when he put on the armor, he has like a noticeably like huge like beer gut. Like
he's definitely got a belly.
Not fitting that armor.
Funny. I was wondering if maybe it's just because he had his other clothing on underneath, which he did. I think he might be fat. And
I think it's just a big fat dad gut.
Well, I mean, the last time I saw Tamora Morrison on screen was in Aquaman.
Yeah.
And in that show or in that movie, he wasn't like a big guy. Like he definitely like you noticed that he'd aged a lot. But yeah, his appearance in this show, a lot of that's due like special effects, scarring and stuff that they put on via makeup.
Really good, like
which really super well done.
Yeah,
they did a great job.
Like it tells a story, right? Just looking at his face, it tells the story of like what he went through.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, he was in like this
the gaffy stick, like seeing like
yeah,
you see him from far away, but like seeing how like brutal that thing was, like in his hands at least, like you never realized this thing is like solid metal with like a metal spike.
It had some weight to it, yeah.
Yeah, it did.
I was not expecting that. Yeah.
That's the first time on screen we've seen it actually used. We only
Luke in A New Hope. True. Luke gets like knocked out with one of those things, right?
Yeah, can you imagine Luke's skull just shattering?
He's just like got a crater in the side of his head for the rest of the series.
Yeah, thank gosh these Tusken Raiders had noodle arms. Apparently, Tamara Morrison kind of changed his voice a bit for the role. Made it a bit more gravelier and
he does. He does do that because I've listened to him on behind the scenes and like he sounds a little more New Zealander. Like when you're just talking to, he actually sounds a lot like Taika Waititi, but like a little lower pitch. But so he actually does do that voice.
But even like his accent was a lot more posh as Jango, and this is like almost like swaying a little bit more towards like the original. I forget his name, Jeremy Block. Is it the original voice for Boba Fett?
Because
but you can see that he's not trying to sound exactly like Jango
that's true. Yeah, he's trying to be a different character. Yeah.
Did voice over that line though in the original trilogy.
Tamora Morrison did do the did redo he is Jango, dude. Let's just accept it. Let's just accept it. Tamora is Jango. He did redo those lines for the special editions DVDs and the Blu-rays and stuff like that. So that is his voice now in the original trilogy.
He's no good to me dead.
Yeah. He's no good to me dead.
It's like his only line.
He did do those lines over, but it's like, I mean, at this point he's kind of aged a bit more as well, so he would sound maybe a little different. He's also gone into a sarlaac pit, so
I was gonna say maybe
I can imagine he would sound even more different than that. And when he did those voiceovers, that was like 15 years ago. Or maybe 16 years ago or whatever now. But yeah, like he's like, I like what you said. Like he's trying to be his own character. He's not trying to be Jango in this role. And I think like that should help a lot of people, except the fact that Boba is a clone, right? Like, and I think a lot of the show, like if, for anybody like who has tuned into Clone Wars, listening out there, like you'll know kind of what I'm talking about when I say that a lot of the I guess focus in that show was actually dedicated to making the clones unique. Like a lot of those characters there was so many arcs where they actually went into the whole philosophical kind of like, these are people, not droids, and these people are men, and these men have their own names and their own identities. And I think the biggest arc in that whole show that did that was the whole General Pong Krell, when he just treated them like garbage, and then eventually they actually like fight back and realize that he's just a corrupt Jedi, but he just treats them like scum and doesn't look at them as people at all. He looks at them as like,
in fact, he intentionally tries to kill them off because he despises the fact that they're just like these creations that they were bred in a laboratory, right? So and Boba being like pure genetic replication, like no modification at all, he is the son of Jango Fett, and even though he looks and sounds like him, he's still got his own, life experiences. Like he's a different person. Yeah, and as we know from the Clone Wars show, like D. Bradley Baker voices all of them, but he actually intends to, like, he brings a certain unique flair to each of those characters. So like Rex sounds different than Cody, and he does that on purpose because of that whole thing, like because they want all
that
those
must be
characters
such a
to
hard
be
job. You play like 10 of the same voice, but you have to make them all like different and then talk to yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's not an easy thing to do.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's so Razor Crest blew up. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I was actually just looking through my notes and I spotted that. Like that's
a bold move. I like it.
That is agreed. It is a very bold move. And I'm going to tell you my biggest fear at this point now. And well, actually, it probably won't happen. But I know a couple episodes back we're talking about if the Mandalorian is going to get Slave One. But now that Boba's back, you won't. I would think, unless some reason Boba dies. But yeah, it makes you wonder what they're going to replace it with, because I don't want it to be Slave One.
No, he should be his own thing, right? Just like he
Agreed.
should be separate from Boba Fett. Like,
Agreed. I do not want them to try to like fan service that in somehow.
But you know,
I think it's so cool. Like this is something that like you kind of that never really happens. Like up until that point, I didn't really think about how screwed you are in Star Wars if your ship gets blown up. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
it's like ultimately you're just stuck on this like crappy like
a good
planet.
point. That's a good point, because the second episode of this season was like just that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like this is a main character, some like rich person that can just buy another ship.
Buy another one, yeah.
Yeah, like ships are worth a lot, and like losing it is a really big deal.
The thing is, I feel like your fears are exactly what's going to happen. That they introduced the Slave One and they destroyed the Razor Crest in the same episode. I don't think that's a coincidence.
But Boba's still there, man. Boba's still there, so they're not gonna just take Boba's ship.
Is he gonna die though?
He's gonna die, or he's gonna give it to him. I'm retired. He's gonna.
I don't need it anymore. Here are the keys, kid, and tosses it to him.
This ship was mine, and my father's before me, and now it's yours.
Treat her well, kid.
He dies.
I don't think they will. I feel like Dave realizes that that's not what people would want.
Yeah,
I think that would make people.
I think he's gonna buy like some really crappy ship from like a port, and that's gonna be like another whole arc where he's to like upgrade his ship. And it's
He's basically done that already in this season.
Yeah.
I don't know. Man. He
He
kind of knows like some mechanics and stuff. Like I don't know if something can happen there with all the people he's met. I don't know though.
Yeah, they'll just fix the ship again. They've already done that like 3 times, right?
That's true. It has blown up a lot.
The Jawas
show.
fixed it in like an hour.
Yeah.
Season 1, so at least
they just gave him the parts.
The super knob is well and good. It's fine. So I think
The Jawa stripped it in like an hour. Him and the Ugnaught rebuilt it overnight.
Yeah. Oh yeah, overnight. Yeah, right.
Do you think that it's a possibility that perhaps the title of the show, The Mandalorian, will eventually refer to a group of Mandalorians rather than just Din Djarin? And maybe that Boba is actually going to be like a permanent
part of
fixture.
his crew.
Yeah.
Well, like Bo-Katan, Boba will get together. You know, he will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think it's building to something that big, or do you think it's going to stay like intimate and small like it is?
I don't know. I mean, that's the
small,
big.
to be
It feels like Monster of the Week style, where it's like each episode is like a new quest and like a new character.
I like that, to be honest.
Yeah, I
do.
mean, like when they were like having these discussions way back in 2005 or whatever, like the rumor had it that the live action show at the time, which was called Star Wars Underworld, would have focused on kind of that younger Boba kind of character at some point. And it's also a storyline that got scrapped in the video game 1313, which a lot of people wanted.
Yeah.
And so like it is a possibility that maybe they'll make Boba a permanent character in this show because of that fan kind of want and then always never getting, right? So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a possibility. I wouldn't put a whole lot of money on it, but I mean, it's the possibility's there for
Some
sure.
money.
Yeah. So we got Dark Troopers actually in action in this one, and
in action, they swooped in, took the kid, and swooped out. I mean, they didn't.
that's right.
do
Yeah,
a
it
lot.
was enough. It was enough for me though to be confirmed that they're actually like robots, which points evidence toward the fact that they're actually phase 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny because to me it just reminded me so much of Iron Man 2, and all I could think about was, no, suit's no good. You want droids?
More drones.
You want drones?
People make mistakes. Drone better.
Drone better. Seriously though, it's like exactly what happened.
Vanko. Yeah, Ivan Vanko style. But yeah, like it's when I first saw them in the first episode that they showed up in, I actually thought that they might have been suits for, the phase 2, 3 kind of like look. But I guess they're, droid
Just
style.
going for it.
Yeah. So I don't know if they'll bring in the whole phase thing into the whole Dark Trooper thing, because there's 3 phases in Star Wars Legends for the Dark Troopers, and they all kind of differentiate. Like the first one, they're robots. The second one, I think they were suits, and then the third one, they were definitely suits, but they were like more like Hulkbuster style suits.
Yeah.
So evidence points towards the fact that they're probably phase 1. And my question to you guys, just yes or no, do you think they're made of Beskar?
No. Oh, maybe. Nah. I'm gonna go with nah.
Question. I feel like that's a lot of Beskar though. But
Well, we know that the Empire's been taking the Beskar, right?
yeah,
And we know that Thrawn is kind of now in the picture, right? So assuming that maybe this is a Thrawn project, like, is it maybe likely that they're designed to combat Jedi?
do they really need that though? There's like,
Yeah, they don't really.
They know about like
I don't
one
know.
Jedi.
Yeah.
Like Luke is like the only one really that they're aware of.
Are they though? That's the thing. Ahsoka's been running around out there, and people. The magistrate works for Thrawn, and she knew about her. And then of course Thrawn knew about Ezra. He's still around.
Seems like a lot of effort for a couple Jedi. But
Yeah, I don't know.
I will say the story points are there because where did they get all that Beskar from? They probably have more. They wouldn't give all of it to the Mandalorian for the job of that kid. So
I guess
it's plausible.
It'll be confirmed, I think, as soon as someone takes a shot at one and realizes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe that was part of the idea why they didn't take the shot this time around, because they wanted to save that reveal.
Yeah, that's what's kind of like got these thoughts going, because like he could have just fired up at one of them at least, but
Yeah,
I guess
that being said, if Jango like took them out with Slave 1, I don't even think Beskar would hold that thing together.
No, that's true.
Blow into pieces of Beskar.
Well,
although the massive super laser blew up Razor Crest and the staff survived, so
That's
I don't know.
different though, because I'm sure there's different parts of the droid that could like separate and tear apart, whereas that's just like a pole.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But it kind of ran through my head at one point. I was like, oh, maybe that's why they were collecting Beskar. I have no idea. So yeah, I mean, Boba also kind of shares a little bit more. Well, we already talked about the whole thing, but he shows Din Djarin that the armor is actually his because it's his father's kind of thing and all this stuff. That was really cool.
Got his receipt.
Yeah, he's got his receipt in his
It was
wrist.
his gene code. It was the gene code of the armor.
Well, it makes me wonder, why. I guess obviously in the story, they were saving that moment, but I don't know. It always kind of it kind of begged me the question, why didn't he just do that before, Din Djarin? Why? Out of curiosity, I would probably check.
Maybe he didn't know it was on there. I mean, each armor set's different, so maybe it doesn't. Yeah, maybe. Info. But what I thought would have been funny is when Boba hits the thing. He's like, "That's my father's DNA, and that's mine." And then funny if the Mandalorian was like, "Wait a minute, they're the same."
Yeah, there's something fishy going on here.
Yeah, what the heck?
So now we know why Cara Dune was tossed that badge. This came up when Reed was with us 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, but he mentioned that it would come up because it could be used as like a like a free pass kind of thing if it ever came up.
He talked about it being the same as what we see in the sequel trilogy, where it's I guess it would be like a badge, but they use it as in that series as a representation of your rank, and in it actually has a code that allows you to leave the planet or like scan in or whatever, right?
Yeah. So I guess now it turns out that this badge has been put to use, and it kind of confirms that she's taken up a job with the New Republic as a marshal, legitimately, because before she was kind of doing it unofficially.
Well, I mean, she could still technically be doing it unofficially and just like have it on her person to if she wants to show it or whatever, but not technically work for them, because she kind of like brushed them off. So I don't know. Maybe she had some time to think about it.
Well, maybe she did say she's got guidelines to follow though. When he asks her that he's got to like break somebody out of prison, right? And she's like, "Oh, I got rules to follow now," kind of thing. So, I do think that she took the job and that she's actually getting paid for this. But it's interesting because like I mentioned earlier, like he's a bounty hunter who's got this career, who is kind of thrown out of the guild for a short time there and then taken back, and the Empire has been hunting him, and he's had some run-ins with the New Republic, and he's not a scumbag, but now he's actually at the point where he's got people on the inside who actually have his respect and everything like that, who work for the New Republic. It makes me wonder at some point maybe if he'll ever team up with the New Republic to take on some of these Imperial forces that are still out there.
I think it'll happen. It's pretty much just a matter of time, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it'll happen directly. It's not quite that kind of show, but the rebels or like the rebellion always seems to be like there kind of at the same time, just by chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the thing is with that X-Wing pilot, he was talking about how like they're stretched real thin or whatever, and they're having trouble in the outer rim. Like I don't. To me, it seems like at some point there's gonna be some correlation where he's gonna need to do a job directly for the rebellion.
Oh yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. Well, and then that's maybe when we get Luke Skywalker showing up or something. Who knows?
I kind of have one thing that's outstanding right now. Who exactly is Boba's kind of sidekick character? Have we seen her before? Am I just
Fennec?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was in that season 1 episode called The Gunslinger. I forget which chapter it was, but it's when Mandalorian and
3.
It's like the first time that we see Tatooine again, and he teams up with that kid who's like brand new to the guild, and he gives him this job of taking down Fennec, and he's like, "Kid, like you're way out of your league. Like she's this assassin," and then they go after her, and they have that whole speeder sequence where they're at nighttime, kind of cruising towards her on the hill.
She's sniping them.
So he he goes off to find one of the banthas because one of the speeders gets taken out. And then she tells him, like, while she's in handcuffs, like, while he's gone, it's like, hey, that Mandalorian, that's the one that the whole guild is after. Like, if you bring him in and the kid that he's with, they'll take you in and probably give you a lot more than what I'm worth even. So he is like unexpectedly, like, I think it's supposed to shock everybody watching, but he just like whips out his gun and just shoots her in the stomach.
Right.
And then just takes off. And then at the very, very end of the episode, there's like, what we now are confirmed to have Boba Fett, walks up to the body. All you see is his boots and like the cloak that he's wearing. And you just assume that that's gonna,
be a thing.
Be a thing like later on where she comes back or something.
Yeah.
Who knows, right?
I forgot that Boba walked up at the end.
Yeah, me too. I forgot about that whole part, to be honest.
Yeah, it was like one scene, but they actually played it in the flashback, like, or in the what happened before, in this episode is like the first scene that they open up with. So so it's kind of cool how they like pre-planned all this stuff.
It was kind of funny because I saw that character and I didn't really recognize her immediately, and my first thought was that Yeah, and my first thought that this is just someone that like Boba Fett met on Tatooine after getting out of the Sarlacc pit.
Oh.
And then I'm like, what sort of wound makes a giant like a slash
belly.
wound? Yeah, I'm like, is this someone that like Luke Skywalker like cut like through the stomach and then they fell
going
through
through
the
the
Sarlacc pit?
Huge story in your head trying to fill in the blanks.
I know, and that's what I came up with. But I'm like, that works.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm like,
Actually, I think a lot of people are in the same place though, because I saw there was some sort of post online where somebody had commented on a screenshot of her stomach and said like, can somebody fill me in? And then all these comments like, dude, watch season 1. It was pretty funny. I was like, oh, brutal.
and then just me in the comments. It was Luke's lightsaber.
Yeah. Just trolling. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's I mean, I actually rewatched the first season before going into the second season, but I guess if it was a year ago now, so I guess it would be a little easy to forget that part, but yeah, she was basically just shot in the gut. So
it's so funny. Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you one more time.
No, yeah, all good.
I gotta get these two things off my mind.
Sure, yeah.
Can anyone like stormtroopers can't hit anything unless it's a man wearing Beskar armor. He gets absolutely lit up. Like, like how are they getting like no one gets hit the entire time, and then he's just like he can't stop getting hit. Like he can't even like shoot properly because he's just like
getting moved, like thrown around so much for the impact.
Yeah. That
you saying you got a bone to pick with somebody at Lucasfilm there?
Yeah, I do. I wasn't thrilled with the action sequence in this episode.
Yeah,
I just thought it was really funny. I wanted to point it out.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. All right, do any of you guys have anything else, or should I wrap up here?
Only other thing I noticed is that I noticed when Grogu did like the force grab thing to get that little gear shift knob, it sounded like the sound design sounded like when Darth Vader does the choke, like the force choke. Like I feel like we don't usually hear the force. Like I don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we don't usually hear the force unless it's like dark side energy.
No, you have force push noises.
Yeah, but not like if you listen to it again, it's like this deep, bassy, like very distinct sound that, to me, I mean, at least I've only heard that when I've heard like force choke. Like
you're thinking, the very like prominent kind of scene in episode 4 when Vader's like choking the guy.
And you hear that like deep sub.
There's like a deep warble sound.
Yeah, it's true actually.
I just thought it was interesting because it usually, like when Luke is training with Yoda and stuff, it's like silent, right? Like he's pulling the rocks, it's just completely silent, and then you hear this like, and he like grabs it, and then he's like "Sispit" or whatever he says.
Yeah, and that's a good point actually. Like I guess through the movies, well, I don't know. Like in the prequels, did we hear a lot of force effects?
Only if they were like physical. Yeah, if they were like physical things, that they were doing, then but just floating stuff, not really. I don't think.
Huh. Yeah. Well,
interesting observation.
Dark side energy.
I think. Yeah, some people have pointed that out actually, that maybe the child's gonna turn into a villain or something.
Yeah, old Darth Grogu.
Yeah. Pretty scary stuff, but
and you the Darksaber.
Oh yeah. That would be something. That would be kind of weird. Like the hilt is like longer than his body.
Yeah, it's two-handed.
Can you imagine Grogu comes out with a two-handed Darksaber and Dave Filoni's never allowed to do anything ever again with Star Wars? He's just
immediately fired.
Yeah,
he was pretty close to that when he came up with the helicopter lightsabers.
Oh man, it still bothers me.
Yeah, it bothers all.
It doesn't even make sense.
Anyway, thanks for coming on, guys. I guess we'll catch you maybe next week.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for having us.
All right, thanks, boys. And thank you all for tuning in once again to Star Wars Escape Pod. Always great to have you guys back. And if you can do this, the genuine favor of sharing this show or this episode with a friend, maybe a fellow Star Wars fan, and or putting on your social media that you tune into Star Wars Escape Pod. And if you're on Twitter or Facebook, feel free to tag us in there as well. Also, feel free to reach out to our email, which is theescapepod@outlook.com, or send us a tweet at SWEscapepodcast. Like our Facebook page, you can look us up on there, and drop a voicemail, which is in the description as well. It's our SpeakPipe address. So multiple ways to reach out to us. It's always great to hear from you guys. It's not your listener mail does not go unnoticed, and really appreciate all the fan theories and stuff that we're seeing in here. So it's always really cool to kind of read what you guys are thinking about the show, The Mandalorian, that is. But yeah, so anyway, as far as the podcast goes, we're thinking about doing a quick kind of express news episode on a weekly basis. And if you like that idea, let us know. I ran a poll on Twitter, which kind of went unresponsive. But if you have some thoughts as to what you'd like to hear, I know there's multiple avenues for that. But if you want to hear it here on Star Wars Escape Pod, please let us know. So in the meantime, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. May the Force be with you.